Bigger Than Hip Hop. I'm your host, Jeff Hodges. On the phone with us is our very special guest, award-winning attorney Todd Belcore. Todd, let me ask you, being an award-winning attorney, how does it feel to know that you were an inspiration to so many individuals and touching so many lives?
It's humbling. Even having that be part of the introduction, I'm not used to hearing those words attached to my name. I just see myself as someone grinding and doing everything I can to help others and open up doors that shouldn't be closed in the first place. So I appreciate you all showing me all this love today.
No question, no question. Now, how did you come up with the name Solve, and what is the thought process behind what you did in creating the software and such?
You know, Solve is actually kind of a name that the folks who were the original thought leaders on the whole notion came up with, and I'm adding some of the thoughts, and why don't we also dismantle the political and legal and statutory systems responsible for people needing the assistance in the first place. So the idea is to solve problems, solve access to justice, solve unemployment, solve poverty, and just allow whatever it is that you need to solve to be something this software can eventually be able to do.
Now, we know that you're big in the judicial system and dealing with the law and everything, but what are some of your other interests? I know you have some.
Yeah, I certainly have other interests. I love to just kick back with family and do barbecue kind of things and enjoy all the Thanksgiving memes that come out every year, and just sit back and make jokes about what someone's auntie's got, and with someone's uncles, like get their liquor from the trunk kind of behavior.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I just love to just do simple stuff with friends, whatever they do. I'm pretty spontaneous in that regard. If they want to listen to some live music, great. If they want to just kick back on the porch, I love that too. If they want to do a road trip, I try to make time for it. So make sure that people are important to me. I feel that, but not just by my words, but by my actions. I try to make time for people.
Indeed. And you guys, don't forget, we got them tickets to give away for that Keith Sweat, Faith Evans, Layla Holloway, and also John B. there in Jacksonville, Florida. We got them tickets. Give us a call at 404-603-8770. Check it out.
Some hot tickets y'all got there.
Yeah, no doubt. It's going down. The 27th.
I'm about to call in from the other line myself. Hello.
Todd, what's on your playlist? What music are you listening to these days?
Sound like Keith Sweating on.
Well, I grew up in the 80s and 90s and all that, so I definitely love the 90s R&B, and there's no question about that. So all that resonates. But I listen probably more than anything to reggae and gospel.
Oh, reggae.
I love the vibes of the wine music, but I also love the way it speaks to my spirit. But similar to the gospel, I mean, it does the same thing, kind of making sure I stay focused and keep the light first.
Okay.
Now, as a policy changer, right here, I'm looking at our live. Someone has a question. They want to know, what is the process of getting a bill idea into the proper hands?
Wow, that's actually a deep question. It's not as easy as saying, well, this needs to change, fix it. It's figuring out where it goes in the statute, figuring out the best way to represent it to get the intended effect, and finding, as you just mentioned, who's going to be the best champion within whichever legislature I'm working with to really not just take on this issue and speak out about it, but make sure you can carry it across the finish line. So what that does is, you try to look at people's expertise with their voting record, their relationships with colleagues on both sides of the aisle, and also make sure it's clear that they're not going to be doing this by themselves. It's not like we just lay it at their feet and say good luck. We're here fighting side by side and making sure we're talking to everyone who's of interest, all the stakeholders, to get everyone on the same page. Understanding when the community improves, everything improves for the state, the city, the county, and just builds as much momentum towards positive change as possible.
Do you find that it's hard to get participation from community members, whether they're African American or Caucasian, any other race, or did you just find that it's hard to get the participation?
I think I still do this the old school way, so I'll still knock on someone's door and say, can I get you involved in this movement? Because at the end of the day, we're inundated with so much stimulus, whether it be email, social media. So that's why it's so important for radio programs like this to really pierce the veil, as you all are doing, and recognizing it's more than just music. It's also making sure we're doing what we can to fuel the movements necessary to change our communities.
That's right.
So at times it is difficult to kind of make sure our voice is heard amongst all the different noise out there, and we try to resolve that by doing kind of the word-of-mouth, person-to-person sort of approach to convince and help people understand that they really can make a The only difference between oppression and freedom is political will. And we can create political will by working together, by voting, and being really conscious about what we do day to day.
That's really, I'm really happy to hear you say that, because I know that there's a lot of people out here who feel like they just don't have a voice, and even if they do speak, it's as if they're not being heard. So the fact that you're giving them a platform to speak and actually say that, you know, they have a story and there are changes that can be made in our judicial system, I think that's really dope what you're doing.
No doubt. The unofficial ambassador for the community members who've been touched by the criminal justice system, seeking second chances and opportunities. We definitely salute you here. It's bigger than hip-hop.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
No doubt. We're going to take a quick commercial break, give you that moment in hip-hop, and we'll be right back.
It's Bigger Than Hip Hop Radio presents a moment in hip hop history with Mocha Brown. Black Thought, the founding member of the Philly phenomenon called The Roots, was born October 3rd of 71 in Philadelphia.
Todd Belcore. Todd, talk about what advice you have for young people who aspire to follow in your footsteps.
Well, my biggest recommendation is stay focused. There's so many distractions out here, so many things that could lead you astray, and these are things I've fallen prey to myself. You know, I've been arrested before. I've dealt with a lot of issues, and it took me forever to graduate from undergrad and all those things. But stay focused, keep fighting, put one foot in front of the other, and whatever you can, surround yourself by people who want to help you be better. Because if not, then you'll never reach your goals if you're not around other dreamers.
No doubt. Giving them links and all of that you like for anyone to follow or keep up with you in terms of social change.
Yes, please. I appreciate it. The website for Solve is solve.is, and for all the Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, it's @ShySocialChange, CHI Social Change, and socialchange.site is the final of it. We have too much going on, but solve.is, socialchange.site. @ShySocialChange. Thank y'all for all the love today. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor and pleasure.
No doubt. Now, we know that at the end of the day, it's definitely an uphill battle you're facing in terms of dealing and advocating as you do against the system is bringing such injustices, and it's a big money game, no question. How do you see the future of social justice reform, and how does that look to you?
Well, I'm really heartened by the fact that people in the music community, the influencer community, are getting more engaged and recognizing that they can use their voice beyond inspiring people in their cars and out and about in communities. They can also use their voice to speak directly to issues through the news and through social media. And I think the more we can harness that by having people like a Jay-Z work with like a social change, saying, hey, what are y'all working on? How can I help this build? Then we really wouldn't be able to be stopped. But then you have the platform to really bring true attention to the issues, but more importantly, bring true attention to the precise solution. So not often enough can we point out the actual legislation that will solve these issues, and we're much better at identifying the problem. But if we can then pair up the problem with the solutions, then the world is our oyster.
Now, it's no secret that there has been many controversy when it comes down to police pulling over people. There are even apps now that someone can click on as soon as they get pulled over, to where the app can record the conversation and can actually visually record what's going on, you know, while you're being pulled over by the cop. It kind of makes people feel a little bit safer in the situation. How do you feel about those apps and the...
I think it's a great idea. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone tends to act better when they're on camera, whether it be police officers or individuals. So there's no reason not to chronicle the encounter, just to make sure if anything goes awry, you've got evidence that's hard. And at the end of the day, though, that's why it's even more important to advocate for laws that can hold police more accountable, because what we see, what's been happening, these videos are just infuriating the public, but then that's resulting in convictions of police officers. Right. So what we need to do is revisit the actual use of force statute that allows police officers to make the credible argument that me pulling over a family, a gentleman in a car with his girlfriend and his baby in the back, could somehow ever present some sort of circumstance where the officer is in fear, where there's no gun present, and there's no other credible threat. But right now, the law does allow the wiggle room for someone like a Castiel to be murdered on Facebook Live, you know. And I think until we change these laws that really allow for these these outcomes to be, continue to be flashed on our screen and traumatizing our nation, we can't expect different outcomes.
Definitely was this whole idea of the cameras was going to make us, as you said, get more convictions and things of that nature. And all the scenes that we're getting is just upfront seats to just the madness.
Right.
And,
Yes,
watching just the injustices continually pile on. Here in Georgia, they're now looking at the Georgia police because they're starting to increase in their shootings and whatnot. So they definitely need to take a look at what's going on and causing all of this, killing and shooting from the police who's supposed to protect us. So,
I just think they feel so entitled to like power. That's what it comes down to. I just think it's power.
Well, I think there's no question that the reason why it's so easy for them to make the case that unarmed black people are threatening is because the world thinks that unarmed black people are threatening. So that's why, right. So, I mean, they can make the reasonable man standard pretty simply because people are just completely intimidated by black people based on the way media has portrayed African Americans,
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons why we also have something called Change Fest in New York, Chicago, and LA, to have people from all over the world come together, celebrate and recognize our common humanity, and see some films, experience the artwork, experience the performance that helps them really dive into the shoes and the struggles of someone else and help them understand in a deeper way than they ever had before. So they can see, feel, really understand what it's like to be mistreated, what it's like to have humanity denied, what it's like to have, be a victim of brutality, what it's like to be, have multiple degrees but still be scared every time police come around. Things that happen to people uniquely based on where you're from. Mm-hmm. So other people can get involved and create these coalitions required to actually create real change.
Now, throughout your entire career, dealing with law school and taking everything now to your adulthood, what has been your biggest motivation?
I guess the biggest motivation is to see how much, a small organization can do. Mm-hmm. If I see what a single mother can do for with fighting through poverty and racism with 4 kids, if I see what one kid can do when he sleeps on, his friends' couches in college and works 5 jobs and pays nickels and dimes to get out of school. I mean, if I see what can happen if someone else helps someone else, I mean, I've seen the power of helping someone else and what that can mean for not just an individual, but a family, not just a family, but a community. And then you start building beyond that, the states and countries. There's nothing we can't do if we're all willing to help and do our part.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Now, someone with a criminal record, do you recommend any particular, say, type of work or employment they should be seeking?
I think the first thing I recommend when people have a criminal history is make sure you know exactly what's on your background. So get what they call a certified disposition or a rap sheet. So when employers ask about it or whatever sort of application process there is, that you can be very specific about what happened. But some things happened a long time ago, and employers may be looking for discrepancies. So even though, you were told you were pulled over for reckless driving and it's actually a DUI, or you're told you were, got a pot ticket, but they're actually saying manufacturing and delivering, you really want to be clear about what happened. So when you do talk to employers, you can not only present yourself as someone who's honest and, has contrition about what happened in the past, but you're also in a better position then to be the master of your future. Just like with your credit, you want to know what that's on there. You got to know what's on their criminal record too. Mm-hmm. And then figure out which employers are most likely to hire people with records. And there's a lot of nonprofits working on stuff like that to make sure it's aware. But also, if you're being denied for stuff that's happened 5-10 years ago, mm-hmm. that's unrelated to your job, that could be a violation of your civil rights. Okay. So it's one of the things we also teach people is to make sure they're aware of their rights when seeking employment. Mm-hmm. So they don't need to find an employer that's willing to kind of give a second chance. At the end of the day, we still live in a society that's supposed to consider people on their merit. And if something's 10, 20 years ago, they shouldn't be denied jobs for that in the first place.
What are the qualifications for getting something expunged off of your record?
Well, depending on the state, it could be the amount of time that's passed since the conviction took place and you completed your sentence. Mm-hmm. That's called a waiting period. So, for example, if I got convicted in 2000 for a 5-year sentence, if my waiting period is 4 years, in 2009 would be my first opportunity to get that conviction sealed. And that's every state has their own qualifications in terms of what the waiting period is, what sort of convictions are eligible. So it's important for people to be aware of what those look like, and I'm happy to provide whatever resources necessary to make sure people have that full information. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, these laws are changing frequently. So it's one of the first things I do is make sure people know, like, maybe 5 years ago that wasn't eligible, but it is now. So don't give up faith. Talk to folks like us at Solve and see what we can do to help address these issues. So by the time we have the same conversation next year, that will be something that you can now overcome that was previously never a possibility. So have faith in the people who are willing to fight alongside you, and be willing to fight with us, and there's nothing that we can't do.
Now, in light of what we was just discussing in terms of the brutality and the shootings, recently, just the other day, that video that surfaced up that's viral where the police shoved a lady.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's in my neighborhood. That's
really?
like right around the corner from me. Yeah, that was crazy to find. But what advice do you have with people in terms of this interacting with police and this hostility that they have? Like, how can you be able to walk away from a situation if you have to encounter them? Like, what is your advice?
Well, my first goal is make sure everyone gets home, and we've seen what happens when people puff up and want to fight back against the police. And I'm not saying that the police aren't wrong. I'm not saying the police are right in all circumstances. But at the end of the day, it's easy to make the case for brutality and harassment when as Dr. King has demonstrated, when you're nonviolent, you're not showing any reaction besides continuing just to function as a basic human. So in terms of putting your best foot forward, in terms of moving the movement forward, but also having the strongest legal case, just be compliant and let the court show. And in those cases, it's much easier to prove the cop is in the wrong. Mm-hmm. When you're doing everything they say, you're obeying a lawful command, and they're still acting out and abusing and verbally or physically, people win those cases a majority of the time. But what happens when it's sudden movement, or they're not listening, or they're pushing back, then it's easy for the officer to make the case that they have some credible reason to be concerned about the individual. So I recommend, even if people think they're treated unlawfully, and they may be, videotape and just be compliant, and then bring your case later and let your justice come on the back end. And that accountability from having this police department be, convicted and found guilty of things is how things will change.
Now, a lot of times the officer who's supposed to be trained and a professional, instead of trying to de-escalate, they are the ones that are escalating a lot of these situations. So it's kind of like really difficult to walk, away without the challenges you face, dealing out there. So it's like,
I feel like it's also a pride thing, like.
Of course, it's a lot of bravado going on, pissing in the wind, so,
Well, there's no question. When you're being disrespected, it's hard to take that. Right. I mean, and you're being mistreated, it's hard to take that, because you're not raised to just be, cuss and push back and be ready to fight. But at the end of the day, we've seen countless videos of what happens when people do that and it goes wrong.
Right.
Exactly.
So think about getting home to your mother. Think about getting home to your children. Think about how important it is to make sure you can live to see another day. And short of that, you may not be guaranteed that. So people have to be careful in that regard and deal with the temporary indignity to then win the war of getting the settlement and getting the accountability we all need and deserve.
Indeed. As a co-founder of the Chicago International Social Change Festival, talk about the type of films you guys doing over there.
Yeah, for sure. We show everything from films documenting the issues with access to water or women's rights, the criminal justice system, violence in our communities. And we continue to make sure we reach out to folks who are working on different issues like peace in the Middle East. And at the end of the day, it's just really important that as many voices are represented as possible so people can see the truths and injustices that other people endure every day in such a pure and honest way that even if I may have been inclined to be doubtful or inclined to kind of not pay attention to it now, it's something that matters enough to me to get involved in.
Now, it's bigger than hip-hop radio. So we definitely got to get into some music.
Cancel it? I'm on a radio interview. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
We're like, what's going on? But no, so we definitely got to get into some music. How big of an influence do you believe like rap artists are, R&B artists, just the whole music industry, period, when it comes down to the law and judicial system and what our young people are looking up to?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. I think there's a lot of different, there's a range of consciousness that artists exhibit, whether musicians or filmmakers or whatever it may be. And I'm really proud that, as the Meek Mill incident seemed to unfold, that more people recognize the importance and value of using their talent, their voice to speak to folks who may not otherwise be engaged in social movements and may think their voice doesn't matter, and have that consciousness pricked and have that seed of revolution planted and watered through other opportunities and other songs. So I think music, the reason why we use it as an avenue is because that is the original way that to really communicate, movement and revolution. I mean, whether from slave times or otherwise. I mean, when you couldn't have a formal meeting, but you could hum a song,
Right.
and within the context of that could be the subtext necessary to provide the fuel, provide the instruction, and provide the next steps for revolution. So I love when musicians use their craft, or artists use their craft, or creatives, or anyone uses whatever talent they have to make sure that we're all working towards liberation for our everyday people.
Indeed. Let's talk about a couple of those pieces of legislation that you've been instrumental in changing, them being HB 2378, HB 5701. Tell us a little bit about that and how that's had an impact on individuals with low-level offenses.
Man, y'all doing some real strong research. I appreciate that. HB 5701 is what we call the Job Opportunities for Qualified Applicants Act, and that's what it's called more often ban the box in other states. But we wanted to have the frame on. At the end of the day, the box is not important. Just we're asking that you actually provide opportunities, stop blocking opportunities to people who are qualified. And that's what's happening when people see I've checked the box saying I'm convicted of a felony or convicted of a crime. They assume I'm not qualified. They don't look at any other aspect of my life and don't realize that I may be the perfect candidate. So that's what it is making sure people aren't, employers in particular, aren't permitted to inquire into someone's criminal history until they notify someone of an interview. And 2378 is relating to a lot of these minor offenses. As we mentioned, if people have as much as one conviction of any kind, over 60% of employers are just rejecting them outright. Over 50% of landlords are rejecting them outright. So we need to find a mechanism to restrict who can look at that stuff, given the fact that it is old, given the fact that it isn't representative of who they are. And that's what that does. It provides an opportunity for people to seal these old, low-level convictions so they can be seen as the person they are today versus the person they were back at the worst moment of their lives.
Indeed. You're listening to It's Bigger Than Hip Hop, and we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. We're back. It's Bigger Than Hip Hop. On the phone is our very special guest, Attorney Todd Belcore.
Now,
Thank you for the round of applause. Y'all are amazing.
yes, we have to acknowledge people like you and who's advocating for, the powerful changes that you are advocating for. Now, we know that Dr. Martin Luther King, as well as Malcolm X, they were big advocates in the community. Not only did it affect their community, but it also affected their families in positive and negative ways. With you being such a big voice in the community, have you seen any changes happen within your family?
Oh, wow. Y'all asking all the heavy stuff up in here. I mean, that's a great question. At the end of the day, my family supports me, but I'm also not as available as I'd like to be. So, you get some of those comments here and there. It's like, oh, you think you're big time and you ain't got time for family stuff now,
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, I mean, I wish God put a different burden on my plate where it wasn't, check to check fighting for justice and missing family gatherings and not doing all the things that some of my colleagues or friends are doing. But that's not the journey He's planned for me and He's got in store for me. So I just got to keep following the course and keeping the faith and loving my family and doing everything I can, show them as much support and love as I can when I have the opportunity to do so. But there's no question it doesn't make things easier in all regards because I'm not there as much and I don't have as much money to give to the important things that merit both. But they know I love them more than anything. If there's anything they truly need, give them a shirt off my back and give them like keys to my home, whatever they may need. So hopefully that provides some sort of solace.
And I'm sure that they see your hard work now. Do you have any sons or daughters?
I don't have any children, no.
No. So if you was raising a young male, what advice would you give to him being a young African American in this community?
Well, I would say what I mentioned earlier, that being pulled over by police is not the time to puff up. At the end of the day, I want to make sure you come home to me so we can figure out not only how to make sure that doesn't happen against you or anyone else, but also make sure we have a system that everyone's proud to be a part of. And then, police officers, I should also mention I have 3 police officers in my family.
Oh, wow.
So I talk to them about the struggles and things they deal with day to day, but at the same time recognizing that while they may be doing the right thing by community members, until more people see and experience police officers that treat them well, and as long as we continue to be inundated with images of police officers treating people poorly, it's going to be really hard for them to even do their jobs when they're trying to do the right things. People then want to say, F you, man, you ain't trying to do nothing. When they're trying to solve crimes, they're trying to address the issues that people call them to address. So on both sides of it, it's important for everyone to be respectful, be exemplify the behavior that you want people to demonstrate towards you. And when police don't do it, it's more frustrating to me, but they do swear an oath and they're in a particular position to serve and protect. But I also recognize how difficult it is on the other side of the coin when someone's coming to a house where they were called and they're being cussed out and told to get away when they were called by someone in that house to come address something in that house. It makes it more difficult to do their day-to-day job. So in terms of a young African-American male now, be careful of the distractions. Recognize that you have less room for error than anyone in the galaxy. And while that puts a lot of pressure on you, the resilience and strength that's in you that you have to be able to deal with all that will help you overcome anything that comes in your way from now until the end of your days.
I want to tell you that there is so, like a little bit of the devil advocate. There's so much talk about when it comes down to these shootings and interacting with the police. Where are the good officers? And you mentioned you talk to your family members in terms of what's going on. What are their thoughts in terms of there are no officers taking a stand against what's taking place? Like everyone's going to work like this is normal. This is like what it's supposed to be.
Well, that's a great point. I think one thing that I'll mention, and I think it's really important to highlight, and one of the reasons why we fought for a whistleblower law is if I tell on you and we both work in an office, your means of retaliation are subtle, if any. You may say, okay, well, if some other employer asks me about you, I'll tell them that you're not a good employee. But if I'm a police officer who tells on another, that can cost me my life. So when I call for backup may never come. When I need assistance or some other just general decency sort of approach and support from other police officers, they may not give it to you, and that could be the day you die. So police officers know that, and so they flex that. So I think one of the issues that we try to provide protections for people who are doing the right thing and calling out their own, who are acting with integrity, and are serving the community properly. So when people are in that position, they can actually not have to worry about the repercussions.
Absolutely. Todd, it's definitely been an honor and a pleasure. Just as I said earlier, we salute you for all the work that you do, your host of accolades, and your continued work championing for the people, man.
Well, thank y'all for the time. Certainly, the issues of justice and freedom are bigger than hip-hop, and y'all are the perfect stage to make that clear to the public. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all you do.
Appreciate you, no doubt. It's Bigger Than Hip-Hop. That's our very special guest, 4-time award-winning attorney Todd Belcore. Give it up for him, y'all. All right? So until next week, y'all stay blessed. And as always, peace and love, family. It's Bigger Than Hip-Hop.
Yeah.